Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. Now, this podcast was supposed to be me building my SuperCoach team, but did I get too carried away after a night out on the piss and build this one myself before bed? Potentially. But we're going to be going through it. We're going to be going through our reactions to all the prices and things like that. We'll go through each position and the top five most expensive players for each position. And then I'm going to go through the team that I've picked. I've done a little bit of a way too early team. This isn't my official team going into next year, but I've put one together just to get an idea of the pricing, what direction I might go in, things like that. And obviously looking at my teams that I predicted going into next year, I've sort of done a little bit of a prediction based off that as well. So let's go through all of the positions. We'll go through just in general the most expensive top five players. So Tedesco is the most expensive player, sitting there at number one at 920k. The next is Tom Trbojevic at 875k. The next is Latrell Mitchell, and he's at 866.8k. Number 4 is Dylan Edwards at 839k. So top 4 most expensive players for SuperCoach are all fullbacks. And then the number 5, and this one, a little bit of a cheapie for this bloke, Nathan Cleary at 811.5k. That is a absolute cheapie, cheap as chips price there for Nathan Cleary. 811k. 805k is the next best for Jerome Hughes. And then 790k for Kalen Ponga, especially after the year that he had SuperCoach-wise last year. That is huge that he's sitting at 790. It's going to be interesting to see the direction a lot of people go down. I'm sitting with Nathan Cleary at the moment, but that might change. I might go for a Nicho Hynes a little bit later on, just obviously depending on, how the side's looking going into Vegas and, just as we get close to the year and we hear more and more things out of preseason, how Nathan Cleary's traveling. We might go for a Nicho Hynes instead. Nicho Hynes is sitting at 735k. You're looking at that Penrith side. It's very different. How are they going to structure their team? Are they still going to be as dominant? Those sort of things start to come into question when we look at building this side and which halfback that we use. Do we go a Jerome Hughes? Obviously, the next best after Nathan Cleary at 805 and save around 5k, 5 or 6k there going down to a Jerome Hughes. All of these sort of things are going to come into question, but those are the top 5 most expensive players. Going position by position. Starting off there at hooker, I got a bit of a blocked nose, and it's happened just at the right time, just as we start recording. Let's go into the hooker position, though. So we start off with Harry Grant at 691k. Look, it's expected that he was going to be the most expensive hooker there. Damien Cook's number 2 there with St. George at 662. I don't know if a lot of people are going to go down the direction of Damien Cook, to be honest. A very big price for him. We don't know if he's going to be starting or coming off the bench. I think that's a real, concern there with having Damien Cook in your team. It's certainly not the direction I'm going down. Damien Cook's number 2 at 662. Then Jacob Little is number 3. Jacob Little, the third most expensive hooker for SuperCoach at 640.7k. You then got Max Plath at 617.6k. And then Api Coruscant is your number 5 at 612. So Reece Robson, 590k is number 6 on that list. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. It's the direction that I'm going down for hooker. I've got Reece Robson there as my starting number 9, 590k. I think it's a great price for Reece Robson. The Cowboys are going to go quite well next year. So I'm going to take Reece Robson to start the year at hooker. And then, there's only a 100k disparity between Reece Robson and Harry Grant. So I guess the trade's going to be a little bit hectic if I go for up all the way to the top there and get a Harry Grant on my side. It's probably not the direction I'm going to go down. But, that's just sort of the difference between 6 and 1, 100k odd, between Reece Robson and Harry Grant. My backup hooker, I'm going way, way cheaper. I'm going to go with Sandon Smith, and he's sitting at 237k. So definitely a while down the list. But obviously dual position 2 there for Sandon Smith. You'd think he'd be starting the year at number 6 for the Roosters, and then obviously finishing the year at number 6 as well, you'd think, when you look at their side going into next year. So I think that at 237k, you're getting a guy that is pretty much guaranteed to start. I'm going to be taking Sandon Smith in my team for hooker. All right, moving on into the front row forwards. The most expensive front rower going into the 2025 season. It is Addin Fonua-Blake at 706.5k. You then got Payne Haas at 669k. Mitch Barnett at 661k. Joseph Tarpanay at 655k. And then Terrell May at 597.5k. In terms of the direction we're going this year, I'm gone really hard on Terrell May. I think that for the Tigers, he's going to go quite well. I hope he does at least. I really like Terrell May. I think going into that Tigers pack, playing around some of the really classy guys that he's playing with, Jerome Luai, Sania Taruva there on the wing. You've obviously got, in terms of the other forwards that he's playing with, you got Terrell May, you got Fonua-Pole, David Clemmer, Alex Twall, Alex Seyfarth. You got a really nice pack around him. I really do like the forward back that he's playing with, and I think that he fits very nicely in there. And all of a sudden, you look at this forward pack, and it's probably getting close to a top 8 forward pack too. So, Terrell May, I like him. I think that he's going to get a lot of go forward. I think he's going to give this Tigers side a lot of go forward and play big minutes as well there in the front row starting. So, Terrell May, 597k. I think it's a really nice investment. I've also gone for Addin Fonua-Blake. Most expensive front rower, but I'm going hard in the front rows. I think that he is definitely a guy that you need to get into your team, especially with looking at that Sharks side and the forward pack that they still have available. Addin Fonua-Blake, Toby Rudolph, Tom Hazelton. They've got some really nice forwards in this pack. Oregon Kaufusi as well. Teague Wilton, Britton Nicola, Cam McInnes. They've got a really solid pack. Even losing Jack Williams, they've got a really, really solid team. So Addin Fonua-Blake in this pack with guys like Hines and Trindle and Will Kennedy and Kaya Little. They've got a really nice team going into next year. I think that Addin Fonua-Blake is a must. And I know that he is expensive at that 706 price, but I think he's someone that you need to make room for in your SuperCoach team. In terms of my backups, I've gone quite cheap with the backups. Corey Horsburgh is someone that I've got in here. Could start, could come off the bench, depending on how you put your team together. But I've got him in my side as a backup here. 355k. I think it's a pretty decent investment for a Corey Horsburgh. What you're going to get out of him in that 45 average from last year. I think it's a great backup, obviously, when May or Addin Fonua-Blake, have the bye. I think that he's a great guy to come in and sort of take the load off a bit and obviously still generate some form of points for your team. As I said, I think that he's definitely going to be in the 17 for the Raiders next year, if not probably starting at 13. So I'm going to have him for sure in the front rowers for the bench. And, dual position, again, I think it's a really nice investment for the 355k you're paying for him. And then I've gone for a real cheapie in my friend Dila Salvaa. I think that he is going to get some game time going into next season. 232k, you're paying for what you're going to get. Obviously, a guy that's only played one game of first grade. But I do think he is going to be in the 17 at some stage. I think he is a nice investment, and I think that he will generate some points for you when he does get a few games under his belt. Dila Salvaa, taking a bit of a risk there, SuperCoach-wise, but I'm saving some cash in the process too. Corey Horsburgh's definitely an investment that I'm happy I've made. Dual position, 355.5k. Obviously going to be getting some game time. But Dila Salvaa, I really do think that he is going to be in the 17 at some stage, whether it's the start of the year, midpoint of the year, or by the end of the season. He'll definitely be in the 17. Let's move on into the second rowers. The top 5 second rowers in terms of price for 2025. Angus Crichton's number 1 at 758.7k. Look, not surprised based off the year that he had last year, the resurgence he had. That price is not shocking at all. Dave Fafita is sitting at number 2 with 749.4k. I mean, you've looked at every single game that he's played. He's had a big game. He's had 100 meters on. He's done some incredible things, and he's averaged 76.5 in the process last year in regards to points. So I think that he's definitely one to have a look at, that Dave Fafita, and the price doesn't shock me either. Number 3 is Isaiah Yeo at 727k, 74.3 average last year. Obviously, if you want to go away from an Angus Crichton and go to an Isaiah Yeo, I still think it's a little bit of a risk. Obviously, the Roosters have a really nice forward pack. So do the Panthers in some respects. They do lose Fisher Harris through the middle there, so they might be generating a little bit less go forward. In the same respect, the Roosters also lose Jared Warrior-Hargreaves, so I guess you're making up a risk both ways. But yeah, I'm probably sticking with Angus Crichton for the moment. But that's a switch that's realistic and could probably happen before round 1, depending on team lists and things like that. Eli Katoa, he's sitting at number 4 with 717k. Again, not surprised after the season that he had. He was one of the top back rowers in the competition last year. 73 average as well. Definitely someone to have a look at going into next season. And again, it's probably a realistic change that we could see before round 1. If I want to go for someone a little bit cheaper, go for an Eli Katoa. And Hudson Young, 70 average last year. He's sitting at 685.2k. Pretty decent price, to be honest, for a Hudson Young. Not the direction I'm going in for next year, but definitely a good price, 70 average. You're paying for what you get in some senses there with Hudson Young. But yeah, look, I mean, there was a bit of fluctuality with his, scores going into last year. 70 average by the end of the year, but there was a little bit of fluctuation, and I didn't really hear too much about guys that had Hudson Young in their team for the whole year. So, go with it if you want to. It isn't the direction I'm going with this season. I am having Angus Crichton there in my second row forwards, and the good thing about Angus Crichton with the really high average is that you can have him as a vice captain or a captain backup as well in your side. The other guys that I've gone for in regards to my back rowers, I've gone for Kulakefu Finefuiaki. He's sitting at 368.2k. They did do a little bit of a training montage, the Dolphins, the other day, and he was actually running the starting right back row spot in that set. So it looks like he'll be starting on the right edge back row. You're getting a guy that's starting, that's probably going to play the full 80 minutes at 368.2k. He's in for a big season. I can just see it. Definitely a guy to be considering here, Kulakefu Finefuiaki. And then I've gone for a bit of a cheapie, and I've gone for a few cheapies here for the rest of the back row spots, just because I'm not going too hard there. I'm just going for guys that are going to be most likely playing first grade. So I've gone for Siwa Wong at 318k. That could change. That's realistically going to change, to be honest. Siwa Wong, depending on team list and things like that. He's most likely not going to be starting. He'll probably be coming off the bench. I'll probably make the switch, just trying to have a look now at guys at similar price ranges, and obviously the cap that I've got left as well. I've got 23,000 left in the cap. That switch could realistically happen for guys like maybe an Alec McDonald, 34 average, 34.8 average actually, at a 341k. You got guys like Nelson in there, not realistically making that change. The Fa'u White, I think, could be starting in the front row, dual position, 367k. We're not going to make that change too much yet, and we don't have the cap to make that change yet, but if we maneuver this side a little bit, that could be a change that maybe happens. But the Fa'u White didn't really work for me too well last year, so maybe not. But going back to it, Siwa Wong's in there at the moment. My bench backup back rowers are Lachlan Hubner, who I think is a real chance of making first grade for South. I think he's a real Wayne Bennett type of player. I think that, as well, you look at their training at the moment, he's actually winning a lot of the drills too. He's probably the second fittest forward in the South Sydney, club at the moment, just watching training and things like that. He's right up there. I think that he'll be playing first grade at some stage during the year. Blake Steep's the same. I think that he'll be in and out of first grade. He's just a cheapie backup, 232k for both of those guys. Two of the cheaper picks you're going to get. And then Tyrone Thompson at 198k. I've got him in there as well. With Leo walking out the door, I think they'll be getting Tyrone as much first grade as possible and really starting to push him into this side. People forget that this Tyrone Thompson, he's sitting at 198k. He probably realistically won't be by the end of the season. This guy played for the All Blacks. He played for the Crusaders. This isn't, a guy that they've been bringing through grade and isn't ready for first grade yet. All they really need to do is just teach him the game of rugby league, and he comes in and kills it, I think. So Tyrone Thompson's he's a really smart investment, I think, as a backup back rower to have in your arsenal for when he does come into first grade. Let's move into the halves. We haven't got too much time left. Let's move into the halves. I have gone a little bit unorthodox. Look, I've obviously gone for Nathan Cleary to start, but my backup halves for both 5'8" and halfback are a little bit unorthodox compared to last year in tactics, obviously, that worked out for us. But again, you look at the flex position, you're getting an extra position, sure, but it's the same salary cap. I think there's only been a minor increase. So you're basically trying to fit an extra player into your side, into your arsenal. And realistically, you don't have any extra cap at all, to be honest. So you're sort of really trying to squeeze someone in, and it does, unfortunately, hinder a few other positions as well. But let's get into the halves, though. My halfback is the most expensive halfback. It is Nathan Cleary. I'm starting the year with him. 82 average last season, 811k. You're getting a little bit of a price dip, which I think makes the start of the season worth it. And what I mean by that is if obviously Nathan Cleary comes out first few rounds, has a little bit of a slow start. You've got, obviously, Nicho Hynes there at 735. You've got Jerome Hughes at 805. You've got guys that are just as good with similar averages that you can bring in if they have a better start to the year as well. And it's not really hindering too much in regards to price-wise. And look, when you're building the rest of your team as well, 811k compared to 900 or so k. Look, I like it. I think that it's not going to hinder yourself too much, and it's actually made it a little bit easier to build the rest of the team and fit other guys in, to be honest, with that 100k or so decrease there for Cleary's price. But Nathan Cleary's my halfback. I think they've taken into account the amount of injuries he had last year as well. I really like him at 811k. I think that he's definitely a guy that people should consider to start the year with, but I know that there are people going in other directions. The next four most expensive to finish your top five: Jerome Hughes 805, Nicho Hynes 735, Tamade Martin is sitting at number 4 with 663. I did have Tamade Martin at some stage last season, but 663k for a Tamade Martin. I don't think there's too many people going in that direction. And then Dylan Brown, dual position, 5'8" halfback. He is sitting at 635k. And look, to be honest, with that dual position mark with Parramatta, and they could have a pretty decent year going into next season. Maybe that is a guy that people do invest in for next year. And Nathan Cleary, Dylan Brown halves pairing, which was what I was really considering too when I was putting this side together. And realistically, I do have the cap to make that switch as well. So if that's the switch I do see fit making, I might make that towards the start of the year. My backup halfback is going a little bit on the cheaper side of things, but not by too much. It's Jake Clifford, the 15th most expensive halfback here. Jake Clifford, 533k. I think you look at the way that he ended the season last year for the Cowboys, he's definitely someone you've got to consider when putting your team together. 533k, he's definitely someone I'm putting into my team at the moment. It's probably a hit and stick thing for me, where Jake Clifford's probably going to be in my side as my backup halfback for round 1 as well. Moving into the 5'8 jersey, top 5 most expensive 5'8s. Dylan Brown's obviously there at number 3, obviously with that dual position. Speaking of dual position, Tamade Martin sits at number 2 with 663.2k. You've got Jaden Campbell at number 1 for the most expensive 5'8 at 700.2k. Look, I think it's a big risk going for Jaden Campbell. I think that while we think that Jaden Campbell's locked into the 5'8 jersey, realistically, the Titans, I don't think any of their spine members are realistically locked in. When you've got Des Hasler trying to put this team together and figure out how this rotation works, I wouldn't necessarily be locking in anything. I think it's a huge risk to pay $700K for Jaden Campbell. So I'd definitely be holding off on making that move to start the year. Number 4, it is Matt Burton at 648.7K. And then number 5 is Lockie Galvin, and he sits at 624K. And that's the way that I've gone for my 5'8". I think that he's in for a big year, 63 average last year. I really do like Lockie Galvin coming into my team to start the year, with obviously the caveat that I could upgrade to Dylan Brown before round 1 if I choose to do that and go down that route. Let's go into the backup 5'8". I've gone a little bit cheaper again here. And again, as I said, it is an unorthodox pick. I've gone with Luke Metcalf. I'm banking on the fact that he'll be the starting halfback or 5'8". For the Warriors, I think he's definitely got to be there. All of the glimpses that we saw from last year and the year before with him in that Warriors team, it screams first grade, it screams talent, it screams Supercoach points. 50 average for the games that he did play last season. I'm definitely taking Luke Metcalf into this team for 43K as well. It's a great investment to make for your backup 5'8". And again, pretty unorthodox going into the start of next season. Let's move into the wings and centers. Your top 5 center wingers for Supercoach for 2025. Valentine Holmes, he is number 1 at 784. Number 2 is Zach Lomax at 773.8. Herbie Farnworth sits at number 3 with 728. Jacob Kiraz is number 4 at 702. We've taken Jacob Kiraz into our team. And then number 5, it is Dom Young at 701. Look, as I said, Jacob Kiraz, he's a guy that I've got in my team going into round 1. I really like Jacob Kiraz. I think that he is someone that is going to be generating a ton of points, 71 average last year. He's an absolute freak of nature, so I've definitely got him sitting in my lineup. He's going to be an absolute gun for the Bulldogs going into next season. Partnered up with Stephen Crichton for the full year. I think it just screams success. And then I've gone for a bit of a, cheaper outlook. I've gone with Xavier Savage at 428K. I think that he'll definitely be starting on the wing, on that left wing there for the Raiders. And he's going to be playing there for the full year as well. Billy Smith, I think he's starting at left center for the Roosters, 317K. Definitely someone that I've got in my team. Robert Derby, I think, starts on the right wing for the Cowboys, 214K. Definitely someone when you're trying to put your team together and price-wise, when you're trying to obviously fit everyone in. Robert Derby at 214K is just a give me. And then my backups. I have got a dual position to start off. Hayes Perham, very high on Hayes Perham. He's on a development contract, I believe, at the Broncos at the moment. Center winger fullback. Obviously, that dual position there is really attractive. Looking at this from a Supercoach perspective, I've got him there as my backup 1. Robert Penasini, I've got him in there as well. He's sitting at 198K. Definitely one of the cheaper guys. Robert Penasini. I'm thinking of the next bloke. Richard Penasini, just don't think he's going to be playing too much first grade, but just, price-wise, trying to fit everyone in. Robert Toya, I think he's the right centre to start for the Roosters going into next season. He's got experience in the centre position. I think they really try and push to put him in first grade long term. 198K as well. I'd be getting him in early. But that is my centre wingers for next season, or at least at the moment. And then fullbacks. This is where I've really spent a lot of cash. The top 5 fullbacks going into next year. James Tedesco at 920, the most expensive player. You've got Tom Trbojevic at 875.6K. You've got Latrell Mitchell at 866K. You've got Dylan Edwards at 839K. And then Kalen Ponga at 790.3K. I have gone for Tom Trbojevic to start vice captain. And then I've also got Latrell Mitchell. I think both of these fullbacks for their respective clubs are in for massive seasons. So I've got both of them in my team. And then also my flex position. I've gone at the moment for Mark Nwonganitawase. I think there's a chance he could play. I really do. I think that it's a battle between him and Robert Toya. if Mark Nawaqanitawase does end up playing, I think that we'll be making a switch. Robert, I think he goes into the starting team. Or, you know what? I'll just keep him at flex. If Mark Nawaqanitawase ends up starting for the Roosters, I'll keep him there in the flex position. If he doesn't, he'll come out, we'll move a few guys around and then bring someone else in. Who that is yet, I'm not too sure. I think that a lot of super coaches are going to struggle with this flex position going into next year. Definitely something to think about. But yeah, look, for me at the moment, it's Mark Nawaqanitawase. I think that he's a chance to start for the Roosters. Watching his preseason footage, he's got so much skill. I really do think that he's a chance. I think it will be Robert Toya just because he's got more, rugby league experience. He's playing centre a lot more often. Every game of New South Wales Cup that Mark Nawaqanitawase has played has been on the wing. And so, yeah, look, he's getting a full season at centre. I'm conflicted. I'm not sure what happens there at right centre for the Roosters. For me, it's Robert Toya at the moment. I had Mark Nawaqanitawase in there in my last predicted lineup. But look, we'll just have to wait and see what happens here. It is going to be really interesting. Both of those guys fighting it out for centre. Toya's got the experience at centre, but hasn't played first grade. Mark Nawaqanitawase hasn't played first grade, just coming over to the sport. Hasn't had any, real practice at centre or games at centre. Has only played on the wing for both first grade and New South Wales Cup. So it will be an interesting decision. As I said, watching the preseason footage of Mark Nawaqanitawase, he's showing plenty of great signs, and I feel like he could be a really great centre. But is that going to happen straight away? I'm not too sure. So I've got both of them there. Obviously, looking at what happens going into round one, I will make a decision based on what happens there and the lineup we obviously get. And depending on what happens there, we'll make some changes or maybe not. But look, we'll have to wait and see. That's my SuperCoach side so far. Make sure to go ahead and click the subscribe button, become a part of the big LEZ'S League community. When the actual team picker comes out, we're going to be going and putting together a PNG side based off the SuperCoach salary cap, which is 11 million. We're going to be going off the SuperCoach salary cap, looking at players off contract in 2020, at the end of 2027, 2028, 2029. We're going to be making a PNG best 17 or, best whatever, however many squad spaces you have left in SuperCoach with the SuperCoach salary cap based off some of the guys off contract. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you go ahead and stay tuned for that. And as I said, subscribe, become a part of the big LEZ'S League community, and don't miss out on any of that great content. We'll see you guys in the next one.